our last question. So we've had a lot of employers, I think definitely the mindset has changed over the years, and a lot of employers are more open to different appearances, alternative appearances, and things like that. But sometimes, employers do want to maintain a consistent image of their employees because they are representative of their brand. And we have been asked questions and we've seen documents about appearance policies. And a lot of employers want to know, really what can they require with regards to an appearance policy and what can't they? And, specifically, can I, disallow someone to have hair colors that are non-natural, like blue or purple? Can I require that people not have facial piercings or visible tattoos? And definitely a question that comes up a lot, and as well as a follow-on as well. If someone were to break this policy that was in place, can you take, we'll say reprimand an employee or terminate an employee if they violate a policy that is kind of under that umbrella?
So staff can be terminated at any time for any reason, or no reason at all, as long as the reason is not a human rights related reason. So can you fire someone for showing up one day with hair that you don't like? Sure. My answer doesn't stop there though, because what type of hair are we talking about here? Are we talking about rainbow colored hair because someone went to a concert last week and they are energized? Or is it a specific type of hair that is worn in a certain way because it has cultural significance to someone? Cornrows and dreads, for example, making an employee change their appearance is making them, in that scenario, change their identity, and that is a human rights violation. Nail polish and facial piercings and tattoos on the face or tattoos elsewhere, they may be, religious symbols. They may be cultural symbols. Some cultures have or encourage tattooing on the face, for example. You have to be mindful of why or what is it exactly that we don't like, and what is it about this thing that we don't like. If it is professionalism that we're after, then you're absolutely within your rights to have a policy that says your hair cannot be rainbow colored. But you cannot say, and you should not say, your hair cannot be dreads. The funny thing about human rights and litigation, which is, funny for me, but maybe not so funny for employers themselves, because it's just uncertain. But the funny thing about this is two people with similar hair, one could be allowed for human rights reasons and the other cannot be. So if you have, for example, and I'm being general here with my terms of race, but if a white person has dreads, that is potentially, or that could be viewed less authentically than a person who actually comes from a place where having dreads or cornrows is actually part of the culture and how they actually wear their heads. So the authenticity of the appearance is also important. One can say, well, this tattoo of a skull on my arm, well, that's part of my religion. What is your religion called? And then they'll start making religions up. That's no longer a tattoo that is allowed, but a tattoo that is religious in a way. I mean, it's a symbol. Tattoos are paintings or a creative piece of a symbol. It's not necessarily a symbol in itself. So one can get really into the weeds of what type of tattoos are allowed and what type of tattoos are not allowed. All that said, every employer should have a policy that says what is allowed and what's not allowed. accommodation under the policy is perfectly within reason. And if you have concerns and you want to be accommodated under the policy, come and talk to me. But the policy says no rainbow hair. The policy says no facial tattoos, unless they are religious tattoos or cultural tattoos. These are different. No one's going to just put a tattoo of a cross on their forehead just because their boss allowed religious tattoos on the face. But that just will allow people who have already these characteristics to stay there if that's the case. So tattoos, hair, piercings, those go under a category of expression that could be protected by culture or religion. Nail polish, for example, as far as I know, isn't. I don't know of a religion that prevents you or forces you to have or not have nail polish. So the common theme of this question is, it is ultimately the decision of the employer to have a policy that prevents something from appearing within their staff. And that's absolutely within their rights. But they should also be mindful of accommodation that needs to be done to the very things that we may think are just a fad, like a tattoo, for example, versus someone who actually is tattooed because they're from Hawaii, for example, and that's part of their culture. Feel free to introduce policies. And in fact, a policy must be included to tell people how they should wear their clothes and not to have baggy clothes or not to have black, tank tops under white shirts, for example. These are perfectly legitimate policy concerns that employers can implement, but these policies cannot be discriminatory. So some restaurants, for example, at one point required a certain dress code of their servers to appeal to a certain demographic. And there's a lot of debate about, even till now, about if this is discriminatory and this is forcing women to dress in a certain way, or if this is a bona fide job requirement to let that restaurant to thrive. That's part of their marketing. It's to be able to do these things. And if you stop them from doing this, you're literally crippling the business as a business. And that's also not allowed. So have policies if you don't have policies, and try to include in them as much as you want to include in them, but be mindful of things that may have to be accommodated and leave room in the policy for accommodation for people for human rights concerns.
Love it. Love it. Thank you for all the detail. And especially, the restaurant example there is a really good one, and definitely one that we've heard a lot about as well.